Hi, everyone, and welcome to this very special edition of Building the DMV presented by Selective Hauling. I am Jill Sorensen. Now, I say special edition because this is actually part one of a two-part conversation with Maria Thompson. Now, she is the Executive Vice President of Construction for Hoffman and Associates, who, as you know, is the developer for the Wharf. So she is very intimately knowledgeable with the construction going on down at the wharf, which is absolutely beautiful. So without further ado, here is part one of our conversation with Maria Thompson. And there she is. Hi, Maria. How are you this
Oh,
morning?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Good. I'm so excited to speak with you. I had so much fun preparing for the panel that we did for women in construction and then on the panel. So I knew I had to have you back for something a little more in depth and some lightheartedness too, also.
Yes, we need some.
Yeah, I know. So, all right, let's start from the beginning. So, what I like to do with our guests is just kind of go into the background and hear a little bit about how you grew up and how that influenced your career today. So your background is actually really interesting and how you got into the construction business when I was doing some research. So you grew up in this area. Your parents had a blueprinting business, correct?
Yes, yes. So most people, there's some millennials who probably don't know what that is, but
Exactly.
way back in the day, when we had actual blueprints, there were like reproduction firms to make copies of them, and so my parents actually met there, working there, and ultimately grew to become partners in the firm. And so I spent a lot of time on the floor making rolling blueprints and three-hole punching specifications, and I was one of those kids who just read everything. So I love to read. I'd take the scrap blueprints home and I'd redraw them or create my own, and just fell in love with construction and architecture. And I think the best part about it is I got to tag along with my dad on deliveries, and we'd go to construction sites. They had contracts with HUD and GSA, and smaller architecture firms. And you may be too young to remember this, but there were actual plan rooms where we would deliver the blueprints to plan rooms around the city where subcontractors could go in and bid the work. And so
That's
sometimes you
awesome.
see people in there working and that sort of thing. So I just fell in love with it at an early age. I knew it was exactly what I wanted to do. I
That
just didn't know how to get there.
That is so cool. So, do you have any of when you would like redraw those blueprints? Do you have any of those
I
still?
don't think so. Like I don't think that I have any. I have some early like pictures that my mom saved, but I don't think I've come across any like actual blueprints. I think I did a couple of our house. Maybe we maybe we used them. I don't know.
That's awesome. Did did you so you said you weren't sure like how to kind of you fell in love with construction but you weren't sure how to get into it. So where along the line or who along the line helped you sort of lay out how you get into this industry?
So I am also a product of DC Public Schools. I went to Banneker High School in Northwest Washington, DC, near Howard University. And it was a college preparatory school. So we had an incredible suite of guidance counselors who helped first time college students like myself figure it all out. So a guidance counselor basically sat down. I said, "This is what I want to do. I want to be an architect." And she said, "Well, engineers make more money." I applied to programs in architectural engineering, civil engineering, architecture. And there were some early construction management programs, but when I was going through, they were primarily choose an engineering path or an architecture path. So that was the story, and I landed at Morgan State University, a historically Black college in Baltimore, because of a full scholarship. I needed an academic scholarship to get through in a full ride.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That I love that the guidance counselor was so realistic with you and especially, as a female at that age to be like, Well, if you want to make money, here's a better route. I think that's phenomenal.
Yeah, they pushed us. They really did, and continue to. Some of the counselors are still there to this day.
So, when you I guess started out, and you started looking a little more in depth into the industry, did you realize that there weren't a lot of women involved in it? Did that ever occur to you, or was it just a non-issue at the time?
I think, I heard a lot about it through, counselors. And when I got to Morgan, professors, a lot of people are like, are you sure you want to get into construction? But I didn't experience it. I was lucky enough to have an internship at George Hyman Construction Company through an internship program called Inroads. And I had a 4-year internship there, and they had really already embraced diversity, I'll say, at a very early stage. This is the late 80s, early 90s. And they had several female executives. They had African Americans sort of at every tier of the structure coming up. So I had a lot of role models there. And so I never felt like I was going to be alone, And I think through other points of my career, maybe, but in those early days, I think I was very encouraged because of what I saw around me.
So, who were some of those early role models? Who are some of the people that have mentored you along the way?
Yeah, I'll start. I have, and I keep them to this day. They're still the people that I go to. But through the program Inroads, the internship, you're assigned a mentor. And my mentor was Lisa Anders, who's probably someone you need to have on this podcast. She's an incredible builder. She's been in the industry, and she was assigned Little Maria when I was 17 years old. And I had a great conversation with her last night about my career and some challenges right now. So she has just been a staple in my career. I don't know what I'd do without her. And like I said, there were other women who were coming through the industry, Barbara Wagner and Andrea White, Erin Brinson, who is still one of my very best friends to this day. And so I had a lot of female role models and mentors, but I also had males. And that was one thing. I'm definitely one of those people that if there's something that I want to learn, or if I have a question, I'll just go up to someone and I latch on. It's kind of like a friend for life. And so I've had some incredible male role models and mentors as well. So it's important. I think that's an important point because sometimes they don't look like you, but they certainly champion your career and help you to develop.
Yeah, for sure. I've had that same experience, so that is an important point for sure. So when you look back and just, in your day-to-day business, how important would you say mentorship is, especially in construction, and is it something that you do want to pass on?
Definitely something that I want to pass on. I think it's critically important because I think when we now think back as managers and owners of companies and everything, recruiting and retaining talented employees is so very important. And I don't think you really do that without a mentorship program that helps guide people through their transition. So when you think about a college student entering corporate America and what that experience is like, they need someone to talk to guide them through, and someone who's not necessarily their supervisor, because sometimes those discussions need to be about the supervisor and what's going on there to help bring perspective to it. And I also think that as you go through your career and you make decisions, that you need a sounding board. So I believe in having a very structured mentorship program within the organization, and then letting it grow organically. Like I said, people who reach out and you connect and you build a bond, you stick with those. I personally am a mentor. I continue to mentor. It's something that I really take a lot of pride in. I make the time commitment. I'm a mentor for the ULI Young Leaders Program. They have a mentorship program. I have an incredible group of the next leaders in our industry who are working for developers and construction general contractors. So I also mentor a young group of women at the Maya Angelou Public Charter School in Southeast DC. And the young ladies enter from ninth grade through 12th grade. and they are simply amazing. So if they're listening, I'd like to give them a shout out because they are amazing and they just bring something to my life that I think I have been missing. Just enjoying watching them grow into young women and graduate and plan their futures. And I'm just excited to be a part of it. So I had to put that plug in for my girls.
Absolutely. That is so cool. And that's something so significant about mentorship is that, of course, it helps the mentee. But a lot of times, you forget that when you are mentoring someone, I know I get a lot out of it. And you feel so fulfilled and so happy just watching, like you said, those young girls at Maya Angelou they're probably crushing it because of you. And I think that's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. They are great.
All right. So let's go a little more specific now, kind of into your career. You started at Clark and then you went to Balfour Beatty. So when you look back, what did you pick up at each of those stops that helped you get to where you are today at Hoffman and Associates?
Just incredible training. They are both organizations that put a lot of effort into their training and development programs for the employees. So very structured, very rigorous. And I think the project management training has really helped in my role as executive vice president, managing so many programs and my staff to be able to multitask, to really think outside of the box and be solutions oriented. I love details. I'm a very detail-oriented and meticulous person. So as you kind of go through your career and you're getting farther and farther away from the details, I kind of had to learn how to just swoop in, get enough detail to make a decision, guide the team, and swoop on to the next issue. And I really think that the stepping stones through the career and that management have really helped with that, and the people skills, right? The people skills to be able to get into a room with the CEO of a company or the chairman of a board, but to also get out in the field and talk to the laborers and the carpenters and the people who are really doing the work and deserve all of the credit. And so to have that flexibility and to be able to communicate well, to communicate clearly, which I think I do most of the time. I think all of those things came through the training that I've received at Clark and Balfour.
Yeah, absolutely. So you went from the really contractor construction side over to the development side. Was that a difficult switch to make, or was it pretty seamless for you?
So I'll tell the truth, because I sort of thought it was going to be an easy transition, right? And because I was hired to be a construction manager, essentially. So I'm like, I managed construction 20 some years. So I can do it. But when I joined the Wharf, it was already in progress. So about a year and a half in the making before I arrived. And so I had to hit the ground running, learn the projects, learn all the buildings, to very quickly develop the trust of my staff and the general contractors who were working, because they had already formed their teams. And the teams had already began to forge a relationship with each other and how they were going to operate. And I kind of came in trying to figure out where I fit in, but my challenge was to lead. And so I think that was probably the most difficult part of my transition, was the team, because they were already reporting to the leadership of the organization. They didn't know anything about me. I think there was an allegiance to the person who hired them, who was going to go away at that point. And so there was a little bit of distrust, in trying to figure me out. I feel like I very quickly gained their trust, and we, just together accomplished something amazing. But that was a difficult transition to really get in, to do all that forming, storming, norming, all those things that you do in the team, to do that very quickly without being disruptive. So that was a goal, that I didn't want to upset the momentum that had already been established. So that was challenging. And then post phase one, I really got into, I really got to see what it was like to be the developer, more so than removing myself from the construction. Now I'm in pre-development of phase 2 and waterfront station, some other things that we were doing across the region. And we opened an office in Raleigh. So between phase 1 and phase 2, I got to see what it was like to really be a developer and some of the unique challenges of pre-development and entitlement and all those things that I sort of heard about through my pre-construction and estimating experience, but you're on the other side of it. And it's just opened up a world of relevancy of saying, okay, this is what I was doing back here in pre-construction and estimating, and this is how that pre-con pricing and scheduling affects the big picture in the formation of a project. So very exciting, but a unique transition, I think, that I found it rewarding to learn everything that I could learn about the process.
Yeah, and certainly a different perspective than what you were used to, but I think it's important for people to hear, about that transition, and certainly jumping in, midstream as a leader. And like you said, earning that trust. It's so, in this industry and in all industries, trust is number one, so I can only imagine walking in and being like, what?
Who is this? Right. Who is this? So it took some time, but we didn't have long. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. So you are tasked with the Wharf, as you said. You're jumping in midstream as it is. So that was difficult. But then you add on to it. I mean, this is a massive, massive project. Was it just, too quick for you to be like, oh my gosh, this is huge? Did you have time to kind of wrap your head around what the Wharf was and what you would actually be doing?
No, no. And for phase 1, I had an incredible boss in Paul Nacetta, who is an industry legend, who's incredible. I've worked for Paul 3 times in my career, and he is one of the most amazing people that I've ever met. And so Paul headed construction at that point. I had Aaron Brinson, who was my counterpart. And in phase 1, we shared the responsibility. I took on the Clark design build contract, and then Aaron had 1000 Main, the trophy class office, and the hotels in phase 1, the Canopy and the Hyatt House. And so we kind of shared the load there under Paul's guidance. Paul retired in 2019. And so I am Paul. We're trying to fill his big shoes there in phase 2. And so it's been incredible. So I think that experience of like the magnitude of it, I'm feeling it a little more in phase 2 because I'm out in front and everyone's looking to me to guide the decisions. But I have an incredible team of construction managers who are experienced. A lot of them were involved in phase 1, and together we have just developed a plan to execute it, and it's going so well with our GC partners. So right now, knock on wood, we're on schedule to open in 2022, and I'm feeling excited about it.
Yeah, fabulous, and such a fabulous development. So interesting, something that just stuck out to me is, you're front and center now, but you said I have an incredible team. How important is it? It goes back to this trust issue, right? How important is it as a leader to trust those around you, under you, working for you, working beside you, especially in construction? And maybe from a personal standpoint, is this sometimes difficult to let go a little bit, or is that pretty easy for you to be like, go, you're good?
No, I am one of the, because I love the details, I can tend to be a bit of a micromanager. So that's been a big point of growth for me, to kind of let go, to develop that trust for them to execute. And the team, I think my team, they realize about me. So they keep me engaged. It's going to sound crazy, but I still get copied on a lot of communication. I get over 200 emails a day at some point, and I read them all. It may take me some time. I don't necessarily respond or chime into all of them, but I'm one of those people who needs a lot of information. And then when I can, because I feel better about it when I have to intercede on an issue, I have context, and that's what I need to really feel comfortable. So my team is patient with me in that way. And now they've gotten very comfortable to say, I've got it. And that's important, right? Where to help me gauge the level of engagement is very important. But I would be nothing without the team. And I think most leaders, I really believe that leadership is a service. That for our team, right? Anyone, I won't say anyone, right? But you can grow and you can train a good manager. A leader is, I think, it's a different dynamic where suddenly you're there to support your team and to help them grow and develop and execute. And so I think that's an important transition. And you see people very early in their career display sort of innate leadership skills, and then to really grow. I'm not sure leadership is something that you teach, although there's lots of, tools and classes, but that's my personal perspective on it. And so I'm really focused on how I support the team and get them what they need.
I am in total agreement. I don't think that leadership is something that you can teach or learn. I think that you are born with those traits, and whether or not they are developed or not is kind of up to you and the environment, in which you put yourself. Yeah. And that was a phenomenal, inspirational quote, soundbite, whatever you want to call it, right there. That was totally awesome. So all right, so when just kind of back to the wharf itself, growing up in the area, does it have sort of extra meaning for you to be able to be working on such an important and large development?
It definitely does. It's like we could sit and have coffee one day and just talk about my life experiences at the Wharf. I mean, I grew up right here, and so we would go to the municipal fish market. It's on family Saturdays. We would do the seafood boils and those kinds of things. So I have very fond memories of that. Some of the early restaurants there, like Hogate's and Pier 7, I think it was called, those were fancier restaurants for us. And we would get, on special occasions, we would go there. So we have family photos there and everything. So when I got the opportunity, when I got that call to come and be a part of the Wharf, I was so excited about it because it was something that I had seen my entire life. And to think about, being a part of the redevelopment and the revitalization of that area that had just been forgotten.
I really did have so much fun talking to Maria, and I'm so excited that we still have a whole nother second part of our conversation with her, because in part 2, we really dig into the construction at the Wharf. That phase 1, that opening day, it was a huge undertaking to make sure that every single retailer, hotel, everything was open on one day in October for phase 1. And it was actually pretty emotional for Maria. So she recounts that story and what it took to get to that point. Plus, in part 2, we also get to know Maria a little more on a personal level. What motivates her as a leader? What inspires her? I'm very excited to share that conversation with you. So be sure to check out part 2 of our conversation with Maria Thompson. For now, that's all for this edition of Building the DMV presented by Selective Hauling. I'll see you next time for part 2.